I never thought I'd end up fighting for my career just because of a surgery, but here we are. A few months ago, I had a serious health scare, something I don't want to spell out in detail, but it required an operation. I came back to work slower than usual, pale, and definitely not at 100%, but I was relieved just to be alive. Enter Karen. Every workplace has one, right? That one person who thinks gossip is a full-time job. Instead of leaving me alone, she decided to invent her own reason for why I'd been away. I'm not kidding, she started whispering in the break room, making up wild stories. By the end of the week, people were looking at me funny, like I had some shameful secret. I tried to ignore it at first. Who cares what Karen says? But it spread, and then came the snide comments. Rough weekend, huh? Guess some people can't handle pressure. She turned my actual medical struggle into a running joke. Finally, I pulled her aside. I told her quietly that I'd been through a very real operation, that it was serious, and that I didn't appreciate the lies. For 1 second, I thought maybe she'd stop. Instead, she smirked and said, "Oh, that's your excuse." Then she went right back to her audience, mocking me even louder. I felt humiliated. It wasn't just gossip anymore. She was performing, making a spectacle out of me in front of everyone. The more I tried to defend myself, the worse it got. Karen thrived on attention. If I ignored her, she ramped it up. If I spoke up, she twisted it into a new performance. Soon, she wasn't just making jokes, she was staging mini-dramas in the office. One afternoon, she dramatically clutched her chest and whispered to a coworker, "He's making me feel unsafe again." I wasn't even talking to her. Another time, she stormed into the kitchen and announced loudly, "If he threatens me one more time, I'm going to HR." I stood there with a sandwich in my hand, stunned. Threats? What was she even talking about? But Karen was clever. She sprinkled just enough theatrics that people began to wonder. Some colleagues avoided me. Others looked uncomfortable. And Karen fed off it, acting like she was some kind of victim of my bullying. I tried to stay calm. I tried to keep my head down, but eventually, her stories made their way up the chain. One morning, my manager called me in. His exact words, "We've received complaints about your behavior. HR wants to investigate." My jaw nearly hit the floor. Complaints? About me? I'd done nothing but recover from surgery and try to work. Meanwhile, Karen had turned herself into a soap opera star, convincing people I was harassing her, and now HR was involved. Here's where things really spiraled. Karen wasn't just a gossip, she had allies. Specifically, her best friend worked in HR. Yeah, the very department responsible for investigating her complaints. It suddenly made sense. No matter what I said, the investigation felt rigged. The HR rep smiled politely, but her question sounded loaded. "Why do you think Karen feels threatened by you?" Not if. She felt threatened. Why? Like it was already a fact. I walked out of that meeting shaking. It felt like I was already guilty in their eyes. My job, everything I'd worked for, was hanging by a thread because one Karen decided to make me her personal punching bag. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every encounter in my head. Was there any way this could be salvaged, or was I about to be sacrificed on the altar of office politics? Then I had an idea. If Karen wanted to play dirty, I'd bring receipts. She wasn't just targeting me. I'd overheard her tear down at least 3 other coworkers in the past month. She'd spread rumors, mocked accents, made jokes about people's weight. Surely I wasn't the only one sick of her games. The next morning, I started quietly talking to people. And guess what? They were eager to talk. Turns out Karen had left a trail of hurt feelings and silent victims all over the office. People were just too scared to say anything, until now. I gathered everything: screenshots of chat messages, written statements, even one coworker willing to testify in person. One by one, people told their stories, how Karen humiliated them in front of clients, spread lies to managers, or cornered them with her fake meltdowns. By the time I finished collecting, I had a small stack of evidence. It wasn't perfect, but it was a pattern. And it was real. The day of the hearing came. Picture this. A conference room with a long table, HR at one end, management at the other, and Karen sitting there looking smug. Her best friend from HR shot me this knowing smile, like, "You're done." They started with Karen's complaints. She put on her best performance, yet tear-shaky voice, talking about how unsafe she felt around me. It was almost Oscar-worthy. I nearly laughed. But then, it was my turn. I slid the stack of papers across the table. "Before you decide, I think you should hear from others." The room went quiet. Manager eyebrows shot up. HR shuffled uncomfortably. One by one, testimonies came out. Not just about me, but about Karen. The bullying, the lies, the theatrics. The pile grew heavier with every page. And slowly, the smug look on Karen's face cracked. The turning point came when one coworker spoke up, trembling but firm. "Karen bullied me too," she said. "I never said anything because I thought HR wouldn't care. But now that I know others went through it, I can't stay silent." That sentence shifted the entire room. Karen's HR friend tried to interject, claiming it was irrelevant. But my manager cut her off. "No, this is extremely relevant." The tension was thick enough to choke on. The more Karen's victim spoke, the clearer it became. This wasn't a one-time issue. It was a pattern, and the fact that her best friend in HR had covered for her. That was the cherry on top. By the end, management wasn't looking at me like a suspect. They were looking at Karen and her HR ally. Suddenly, the questions weren't about my threats. They were about favoritism, abuse of authority, and negligence. Karen went pale. Her friend looked like she wanted to disappear. I sat there quietly, heart pounding, as the weight of weeks of humiliation finally lifted. For once, I wasn't the one on trial. The verdict came down a week later. Karen and her HR friend were both terminated effective immediately. My record was cleared. My manager even apologized for letting it get that far. But Karen wasn't done. Oh no. On her last day, she staged the most dramatic exit I've ever witnessed. She packed her desk in slow motion, muttering loudly about being betrayed. She shoved papers into boxes like she was auditioning for reality TV. Then, in front of the entire office, she screamed, "You'll regret this. He's the real bully." People just stared. And then, like a switch flipped, the truth spilled out of her. She ranted about everyone calling one coworker lazy, mocking another's accent, accusing management of being spineless. She showed her true self to the whole office in one glorious meltdown. Security eventually escorted her out, still shouting. But by then, no one had doubts left. Karen had written her own ending. Update. The office feels lighter now. People smile more. Work actually gets done. As for me, I'm just grateful I fought back. So, Reddit, was I wrong for fighting back instead of keeping quiet? YTA, NTA, ES, or NA? It's your turn now. Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story kept you listening, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.